We are going to talk about goal setting process today. I call it from defeat to victory. And when we talk about goal setting, it's important to understand that there is a process to it. Sometimes we think you just sort of slap things on a piece of paper, which, by the way, if that's all you did, the odds of actually accomplishing your goal goes up probably about 25 to 35%. So it's not a bad thing, but we want to have that actually go up a lot higher from an odds perspective. And so we want to walk through a process of step by step what we want to do and why we do it so that we can have the most success of outcome as we plan for our goals here in 2024. So the first step is to what I call toss it away. When we go about doing goal setting, I don't know about you, but the first thing that we have to address is our stinking thinking. The head trash that we have that you might have that could get in the way of you achieving your goal. Sometimes we don't think about that. Is we just think, well, I just need to get going, but we don't take the time to actually think about what is it that I'm thinking about and correlating with when it comes to goals. We usually focus on the way we feel, but we actually don't go through and say, well, what am I actually thinking about that is causing the feeling? That would be called sort of cognitive therapy, where they're trying to get into your mind to figure out what are the thoughts that leads to the emotion. So here's some things that I thought about that might at least spark you as you go through your process. I haven't been successful in the past. That could be one of your particular hold on points that makes it a negative thing. The next one could be, I don't have the willpower to pull this off. That could be something you're thinking about. Another one might be, I don't have the resources to pull this off. Okay, that could be a limiting belief. It is too overwhelming to do goals. There's just too many things for me to think about when I go about goal setting. I don't even know what to write down, so I won't do anything. It's just my mind goes blank. And finally, it only creates disappointment and shame, so I don't want to go down that road. Those are just a few things. You might have some yourself, but the first thing we have to do is to toss it away. We did this up at the retreat when we said no longer, but it took the time to write things down. What I would encourage you, that I actually have done, I actually did it the other night as well, is to write a new story. Identify those things that are those stinking thinking thoughts, and then start writing a new story. Literally write it down, this new storyline of what things are going to be going forward. There's a lot of power in that when you actually write out a new story for what things are going to look like. And I do think that that is one of the most important things that we can do as we prepare to do goal setting in this time and also for 2024. It's just, let's toss it away. We address it, and then we want to toss it away. The next one, step 2, is past regrets. We want to look at past goal achieving regrets to see what happened when you didn't achieve things. And then furthermore, to look at things you did do that helped you achieve. So these are the bookends of regrets. You say, gosh, what did I do that didn't work? Okay. And then what is it that I did that did work? You want to look at both of those things on each side. And maybe it is that you had never actually looked at your goals. Sometimes they get written and just tossed in the drawer. Maybe that you didn't include other people in the process. Maybe you didn't do some legwork to confirm timeframes and other factors. Maybe you didn't have others review them for you. Maybe you didn't map them out. Maybe you didn't look at the roadmaps to see how you could be successful. So these are just some ideas of past regrets and ways to look at it so that you can walk through and take those experiences and tweak them to be successful failures. So before I go on, do you guys have any comments or questions about step 1 and step 2, the stinking thinking, tossing that away, and then past regrets?
I think on the stinking thinking, sometimes it's thinking from outside. It's we've all got those mentors and the people that we look up to, but they're human too, and they can sometimes feed the, well, it can't be done, or you're looking into something that's already established, and it's like, well, like the banking industry, it's already done, it can't be changed. And I think, yeah, that does become our own stinking thinking, but we have to realize that that's just somebody else projecting their stinking thinking into our heads.
It's a really good thought of just somebody else pushing from the outside to come in to try to create a narrative that you may not want to embrace. It's really good. Okay. So step 3 is, why are you doing this? This is a great step, is just to ask the question. Why are you setting this goal? Is it relevant? Is it impactful? Is it motivating? Is it mine or is it someone else's? Am I passionate about it? Do I need somebody to help vet this out before doing it? This is a great opportunity to just go down questions. Why am I doing this? Why is this important? Is this relevant in this season? Is it going to be impactful? Those are questions we can ask ourselves as we go through our goal setting process and we're writing things out. We can poke some holes and ask some really good questions for us to challenge things by asking the question, why? Why are we doing this? Step 4, we're now at the place of literally writing these things out. So we've kind of dealt with stuff in the past. We've addressed some of the head trash stuff. We've maybe asked some questions. And now we're ready to literally go through the process to say, all right, let's make these goals. And as you've heard many times, but we'll reiterate again, is, let's make SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, risky, and time bound. S is specific. Specific is terrific. Vague is the plague. That was a brand new one you guys have never heard before, but it's something new. Measure something so you can manage it. Okay, if we don't measure anything, you cannot manage it. Okay, just taking the time to log things helps you go back and say, is that the right direction? Do I know how many I've made? Do I need to make more? Do I need to do less? But it helps you measure and you can manage. Attainable is so it's sustainable. So you want to do something that in that time period that you have that's attainable. Is it going to stretch you? Yes. And that's what we want to be able to do. We want to make sure, is this attainable for this time season? Risky makes you brisky. So it makes you get a little bit out of your comfort zone, and that's okay. So we want to do things that stretch us, might be a little risky, and push us into out of our comfort zone so we can not let our dreams go to death. And then the T is time bound. Makes things sound. You notice I'm rhyming here. I'm just trying to have fun with this, but time bound makes things sound. So when we put a time horizon and a time frame on this, it makes it real. It gets the clock going. Every single morning when we get up and the kids come out, I literally take a time clock and I turn it on to 45 minutes. I said, okay, guys, we got 45 minutes to get it done, right? So they get to experience there is time and it's not stopping and it's going one direction, and we want to be prepared and move so that we can manage our priorities well. Step 5 is feedback. So you've written some goals down. You have some ideas of what you think you want to do. Now we want to get some feedback. So we want to identify targeted people for feedback. We wouldn't go ask the butcher about something having to do with our health, right? We want to make sure that it's aligned appropriately, that if we're asking a question, Maybe it's about human resources or recruiting. We want to go to someone that might be savvy in that particular space. So they have a lot of knowledge, wisdom, understanding. If we had something to do with onboarding, right, we might want to go to Scott because Scott has a lot of experience. That's the person we want to target to get feedback from them because they have wisdom to speak in. The next thing would be to write down what you are specifically looking for from them. When you go to somebody for feedback, you want to go in prepared. Don't just show up. You want to just say, what's the, reality? What are time frames that I need to be looking at? What are any obstacles that you see? What connections do you think you can make for me? You just want to know, what is it I'm asking for them when I go to them so that I can be most efficient with their time? A question you can ask is, what am I missing? That's a great question I love to ask. What am I missing? What am I not seeing that you're seeing? Terrific question to ask people for feedback, because they'll say something and you'll go, oh, okay, I would have missed that. Well, if you didn't ask that question, you would have gone all the way down the road. And I've done this, I know you have too, and went, oh my gosh, how did I not know that? Well, you could have avoided that just by this conversation. What else should I know? Right? What am I missing? But what else should I know? Just to compound on that. What additional resources do I need to be successful? What are the costs that would be involved for me to be successful? A great question to ask somebody who could speak and give some feedback to your goals. What other ways could I think about this that I might not be thinking today? Again, remember when Doug talked about perspective? Just having somebody go, you might want to look at it from this perspective, and you go, oh, okay, that's a great point. How should I be thinking about this other than I currently am? So again, these are just some questions to start shifting and extracting out of people effective feedback, just so you can have so much more possibility for success when you go about doing your goals for 2024. So do we have any thoughts just about what we've talked about so far as it pertains to the SMART goals, feedback, before we go forward? I want to make sure you guys, or questions, you guys might have some questions.
Yeah, I think there's a big thing to be said about, going down the road and thinking what could have been different, as I had a successful failure just today on doing that exact thing where, you can look at things differently and also assess that and then learn from your failures, but then also grow from them too. With goal setting, a big deal is also just ensuring that it's not something that's too far out of reach, where I think sometimes we can be guilty of, we should be encouraged to think big, but not overly big where it's unattainable. So that's maybe a piece of feedback that we can always look for, like, hey, is this actually going to be something we can accomplish?
Yeah, it's great. Great, Dan.
I just had the comment of, I think this is such an important step, because you could leave, like, it's something that you could leave out. You could just skip past getting feedback and just go with how you think it's going to go best. But when you give yourself the vulnerability, or you take the time to be vulnerable and be like, okay, it's okay if I'm wrong, or it's okay if someone has suggestions or feedback for me or ways to guide me, you can really skip past so many of the different obstacles that you might run into if you didn't just ask someone before.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there is a sense of vulnerability in that, because, we could be wrong. They could say, I think you're probably need to go in this direction. And as they say with many counselors, plans don't fail. So lots of different people poking at it. So great observation. Okay, step 6, celebrate good times. Come on, you guys don't know that one. You're too young, but there was a song that did that. So Larry probably knows that. But
song.
You know that song, Celebrate Good Times? Come
Yes.
Yeah.
No comment.
So we want to be able to actually, I know this seems a little silly, but I don't think it is, but we really want to say, what will be the rewards if I achieve the goal? What will be the consequences if I don't, right? What happens if I don't achieve this goal? Think of tangible and intangible things. What do you gain versus what do you lose? You need both, right? We get motivated on both of those things. What do I gain? What could I potentially lose? It's a good question to ask and a good exercise to go through. And it's not even just what do I do when I get to the top of the mountain, but how could I celebrate along the way? So if I get, if it's going to take me this long, maybe I get to the quarter way and I stop, and you actually focus on the gain that you've had versus just the gap. I know that I tend to struggle with focusing more on the gap than the gain. And so it's good for us to actually prepare as part of the process that we celebrate when we get to the top. So it's good for us to remember that as a step, to actually prepare and map out what are going to be those rewards, how are we going to celebrate, what is it going to look like. Step 7 is obstacles. I know this is a shocker. Things might get in the way. And when I thought about obstacles, a few things came to mind. One, my temperament and habits. All of us have different temperaments. Some of us are high strung. Some of us are too relaxed. Some of us are, have a tendency maybe to procrastinate. We just all have different temperaments than the other one. And some of us might be super impatient, right? And so we just have to recognize what are my temperament, what are my habits. I'd even say, what are my triggers? Actually, Patrick said that in his speech on Peeling Back the Facts. He said, I know my triggers before I go into situations, and that helps me know how to mitigate them. And I thought that was really wise, that you just start to know, this is my propensity to things as I've looked in the past, and I just need to understand that that could be an obstacle in the way. So just taking some time, not in a shame way, it's just, again, it's just observation. That's a fact. Those are things that happen. Number 2 is others I can't control. Okay, there might be situations with clients, workers, wherever you're at, you just can't control, and it could potentially be an obstacle to where you're trying to go. And so again, you might not be able to do anything about it, but at least you can recognize it and also prepare for those things, knowing what that's going to look like. So for example, if I have somebody that I know I have to work with, maybe they, it could be a client or something, and I know that I'm going to work with them, but maybe they just talk a ton. And you could spend 45 minutes real fast on the phone with them. And so just being prepared with that in advance and knowing, at the beginning of the conversation to go, hey, I just want you to know I've got a hard stop in about 10 minutes, right? So just things you can do to understand that's an obstacle. You can't change them, but you can at least be prepared for it. Number 3 is priorities that are real. Priorities that are real. Just understanding, you're going to have priorities. And they're going to shift and weave and bob sometimes. I know Mackie has to deal with this and me all the time. It's like, is that a priority? Is this one? Which one's a priority, right? It's always recognizing there's going to be obstacles around this concept of priorities. And so we have just recognizing that and actually taking the time to write down your priorities is really helpful when you go back and say, oh, that's probably more of a priority than this. And then the 4th one is resources that I perceive to lack. Okay. Every single one of us probably struggles to say, I don't have the resources to pull that off. And the reason I said I perceive to lack is because you can always get access to things more than you believe you can in order to pull things off. And so these are just 4. There might be more. And so I'll just leave it open to see if anybody else has anything else they would add to this list. But these were 4 that kind of stuck out to me as potential obstacles that we would want to at least look at and recognize and call them out before we proceed on our goal movement. So I'll leave it open if there's any comments or any things you would add to the list.
Others I can't control. So I think a piece that could also be like external factors such as like people that bring energy to your goals. Like it could be
Hmm.
negative, you know, just kind of convincing you otherwise and
Yeah,
best interest though.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, just some naysayers or
Correct.
negative naysayers for sure. Yeah, that is absolutely can be an obstacle for sure. So, good. Okay. Step 8, solution. Okay, once you've written all those down, guess what you're going to do next? Solve them. Write down what are you going to do? What are the mitigating things you're going to put in place to help you overcome these things? Do you need to have an accountability partner? Do you need to have something for your phone to arrest it for the night? Do you need to have an automated thing that reminds you of something? Do you need to make sure that you print off 5 copies of your goals and put a few on your wall and give the rest to friends? Do you need to put in check-in points? You know, do you need to calendar these things? There are so many ways to try to solve the problems that you might run into. And so your job is to go through the exercise, but also to pull other people into the exercise. So that's a really healthy thing, is not to just leave it to yourself, but to pull other people into it to help solve the problems that you're trying to go through. So that's step 8. And then the final step is to take action. So action and accountability is step 9. You got to go for it and do it now. What actions and steps should I take right now? And write it down on the, I guess I should probably work on my spelling there. But write down on the calendar and get the ball moving immediately. So you want to actually take this and put it in your calendar. And you want to take action and move now. I'm just wired that way. As soon as I hear something, poor Mackie and Michelle get this all the time. I'll just pop stuff off, you know, early in the morning or whatever, because I'm just like, I want to get this going. What is this? But just taking action and then having accountability are just really half the battle in getting things going, is just moving in that direction. Whether you start talking about it or moving, but you know, whatever goes in motion stays in motion. And so, you know, you want to definitely just get going and you know, writing it down and starting to prepare for those things and mapping out your week is one of the best ways that you can do that. So that is our steps when it comes to setting goals. So I'll now leave it open to you guys to